Unit 1, Lesson 10. Let's look at some more examples of applications to linear systems. So let's look at shapes. The perimeter of a rectangle is 154 centimeters. The length is 4 centimeters more than the width. Determine the dimensions of the rectangle. So you have a rectangle. Let's draw a rectangle to start with. So here's a rectangle. And let's say here's the length, L, and here's my width, W. Okay. And we need to define some equations for this. Okay, so we have the perimeter of the rectangle. So we can express perimeter as a single equation. So here's equation 1. The perimeter is 2 times the length, so 2L, plus we have 2 width, so 2W, and that's going to be equal to a total perimeter of 154 centimeters, so 154. Okay, we're also told the length is 4 centimeters more than the width. So we can use that statement for our second equation. And that says the length, L, is equal to 4 more than the width. So 4 plus W, or W plus 4. Okay, so here are the two equations. Here's our linear system, and we're going to solve this linear system. And I'm going to use substitution to do that. Okay, so let's use substitution. So using substitution, I'm going to substitute L. So L equals, let's say W plus 4 into equation number 1. Okay, so here's equation number 1. Let's write it up here. So 2 times my length. My length will now be replaced with width plus 4. And the rest of the equation says plus 2W equals 154. Okay, so now our equation just has W and no L's. We can solve for W, kind of have to solve a linear equation. So again, just follow your steps for solving linear equations. So 2 times W and 2 times 4, I need to do that. So 2W plus 2 times 4 is 8, plus 2W equals 154. Okay, collect like terms. So 2W plus 2W is 4W. If I subtract 8 from both sides, I'll have 154 minus 8, and no more 8 on the left. And so 4W is going to equal to 146. And if I divide both sides of the equation by 4, I'll get my answer for W. So W equals 146 divided by 4 gives me a decimal, so I'll put 36.5. Make sure you're not rounding. You keep your numbers as is, because otherwise you'll affect the answer. So substitute W equals 36.5. And you can pick any equations. You can pick equation 1 or 2, but 2 looks really, really simple. If I put W in there, I add 4 to it, I get my length. So that's going to work out nicely. So length equals 36.5 plus 4, and so that's going to be 40.5. So therefore, the length is 40.5 centimeters, and the width is 36.5 centimeters. So don't forget those concluding statements. Okay, let's look at another example. Let's looking at prices now and buying stuff. So to join the karate club, David must pay a monthly fee of $25 and an initial fee of $200. If he chooses Cool Karate, it's a club name, he must pay an initial fee of $100, but $35 per month. So you have an initial fee and a monthly fee, or a rate. Okay, so that those two numbers are going to help us define our equations. Okay, part A, after how many months is the cost the same at either karate club? And part B, which club should he join? So let's define our variables first. So let's see, we're dealing with costs here. We're paying money. So we're going to say C represents cost. And we also have number of months because we're paying a rate per month. So we're going to use the letter M to represent represents the number of months. Okay, So let's create our first equation. So first club, each equation will now be used to define the price for each club. So the first club, let's say Karate Club is the first one, so number one, and we're going to use Cool Karate as number two. So Karate Club is going to be having a cost C that's equal to $25 a month, so 25 times the number of months M, plus your initial fee of 200. And Cool Karate number two is going to have a cost of $35 a month, more expensive rate, but an initial fee of only 100. Okay, so far that's what we have. Now, so I wrote the equations this way because it looks like I have something that's lined up. They are stacked on top of each other. So guess what kind of method will I use for this one? Elimination. Okay, so I'm going to use elimination. How am I going to eliminate these variables here? I'm going to subtract the two equations. I'm going to eliminate the c's, so I have to eliminate them by subtracting, because c minus c is 0. And then everything else I'll subtract. 25m minus 35m is negative 10m, and 200 minus 100 is still 100, so plus 100. So now I have one variable in this red equation here to solve for. So if I solve for m, it turns out, well, okay, negative 100. If I subtract both sides by 100, I'll have negative 100 equals negative 10m. And so m is equal, if I divide both sides by negative 10, I'll get m. My answer for m will be 100 divided by 10, which is 10. So m equals 10. 10 months. Okay, so do I need the costs? Actually, I can go and find c. So what would, so if I took m and I put it into any one of these equations, I can also find c. So for example, c is equal to 25 times 10 plus 200. And then I can find c. Okay, 25 times 10 is 250 plus the other 200. And I get 450 as my answer. Now, the thing is, I don't need the cost. The question doesn't ask about anything about the cost. I only need to know how many months is the cost the same. So the cost is going to be $450 with either equation, like you can see for the other equation too. C equals 35 times 10 plus 100. Well, that's going to be 350 plus 100, which is also 450. So the costs are the same if you have a membership of 10 months. Okay, so, but I don't really need the costs. I already know that that's the point. The point of intersection will happen at m equals 10. So the cost, part A says the cost is the same at 10 months. Okay. Now, what happens? Which club should you join? Well, one club is cheaper than the other if your membership is only going to be less than 10 months, and the other one's more expensive. Okay, so it depends on how many months he wants to be a member. If he wants to be a member for more than 10 months, well, he should choose the Karate Club. Well, why? Because the Karate Club has a smaller monthly fee, right? So if you imagine, even sketch a scenario of this, a graph of this. Karate Club starts at $200, but its slope is not as steep. Okay, its slope is only 25 a month. But if you look at the other club, which is the what's the name of the other club again? This is a Cool Karate. They start at $100, but their monthly fee is a little bit more expensive. So over a long period of time, it'll be more expensive. So here's where they meet. That's my 10 months. So this is 10 months. Okay, and so this is a KK Karate Club, and this one here is Cool Karate. So you can see Cool Karate is more expensive if you're above 10 months, but Karate Club but Karate Club is more expensive if your membership is less than 10 months. So the better deal, if you're going to be doing a long-term membership, would be to join. Did I mix up the names here? Karate Club's number one. Okay. So Karate Club. No, that was right. So Cool Karate. I should have said this. So Cool Karate. It's number two, and I don't want to confuse anyone here. It's a Karate Club, and this is a Karate Club. Okay, so this is Karate Club. It has the higher starting cost, and its rate monthly plan is cheaper, And Cool Karate has the lower initial cost, but it has a much higher rate for its monthly plan. So at some point they meet at 10 months, it'll be the same price. But after 10 months, Karate Club uh, Karate Club is much cheaper. Cool Karate gets more expensive. So for part B, the answer is it depends on how many months, he wants to be a member. If more than 10 months, then he should choose Karate Club. Why? Because if you look on the graph, monthly rate's still cheaper. You've already passed the point where they have the same cost. So just a matter of which one has the cheaper monthly cost, and that's Karate Club. $25 a month. Okay. All right, let's look at another example. Again, another kind of like physics speed time thing here. So distance and time. If it is a 230-kilometer journey from Jackson's to the Jackson's cottage, part of the trip is taken on gravel roads at 50 kilometers per hour, and part is taken on paved roads at 80 kilometers an hour. If the entire trip takes 4 hours, how much time is spent on gravel roads and how much time is spent on paved roads? Okay, so we're going to need to remember again what's the relationship between distance and speed and time. So distance equals your speed times the amount of time you travel at that speed, right? So if you traveled for 100 kilometers per hour and you traveled for 1 hour, then your distance would be 100 kilometers, right? Okay, so so I'll write that example. So the example, if you have 100 kilometers per hour times 1 hour, your distance would be 100 kilometers. Make sense? Okay. So what are the equations going to be? Well, we need an equation. We need a variables actually first. So what are our variables going to be? Well, let's say P and G. We have paved and gravel roads. So P will be the time we spend, time on paved road, and G will be the time spent on gravel, time on the gravel road. Okay, so that's what the question is asking. How much time is spent? How much time is spent? So these variables have to represent time. So look at always what the question is asking so you can get a hint on what the variables should represent. So my first equation, let's talk about distance now. So distance, we've traveled 230 kilometers to get to Jackson's cottage. And that 230 kilometers, part of it's on paved and part of it's on gravel. So the parts on paved, well, to get the paved distance, I need to know the paved speed and the time I spent on the paved road. So 50 kilometers per hour is my 50 kilometers per hour is my time on gravel roads, and 80 kilometers per hour is my speed on gravel roads, and 80 kilometers per hour is my speed on paved roads. So I have 50 kilometers per hour times my time spent on gravel roads, plus the 80 kilometers per hour times the time spent on my paved roads. Okay, so speed times time gives you distance, speed times time gives you distance. All right. Now the entire trip takes 4 hours. So my second equation will be based on time. So use the separate sentences. So these are different statements, different sentences or sentence fragments to help you determine the equations you're going to write. So from just this part here, the entire trip takes 4 hours. I know 4 hours is composed of the time spent on the gravel road, G, plus the time spent on the paved road. All right. Okay, so I'm going to solve this equation. I'm going to use substitution. So use substitution. You could try using elimination, but I think substitution is a little bit quicker. I'm going to first take this equation right here. My program is a little bit freezing up on me. Let's strange. Okay, let's see if I can. Just have to ignore those extra marks there. Let's see. Okay, it still writes. It's fine. So using a substitution, I'm going to rearrange equation 2 to say P equals 4 minus G. So I'm just subtracting both sides of the equation by G. And I'm going to substitute that into equation 1. So sub into equation 1. So when I substitute that into equation 1, I'm going to have 230 equals 5 times G, sorry, 50 times G plus, what happened here, 50 times G plus 80 times P, and P can be replaced with 4 minus G. Okay, now I have an equation with just the G. I'm going to expand. So if I expand this, I get 230 equals 50 times G plus 80 times 4 is 320 minus 80G. Okay, then if I collect like terms, so 50 minus 80 is negative 30. That's right over here, so negative 30G. And 230, if I subtract both sides of the equation by 320, I'll get that on my left side. So 230 minus 320 is 90, it looks like, yeah. So negative 90 rather. Okay, equals negative 30G. And if I solve for G, I divide both sides by negative 30. And I'll get my G equal to 3. So 3 hours on the gravel road, which means the time spent on the paved road, if I substitute it back into my equation, P equals 4 minus 3, which is equal to 1. So the time spent on the paved road is 1 hour. Time spent on the gravel road is 3 hours. So therefore, 1 hour on the gravel road and, sorry, paved road, huh? 3 hours on the gravel road and 1 hour on paved road. Okay. Let's look at one more, a little chemistry question on mixtures. So Miriam has a bottle of 5% acetic acid. So when we talk about percentages, we mean the concentrations. And a bottle of 10% acetic acid. All acetic acid is just vinegar, right? So just the chemical name for it. So how much of each should, different concentrations can have certain acidities, which can be toxic too, so be careful. So how much of each should she use to make 250 milliliters of 8% acetic acid? So you're going to combine 5%, combine a 10%, and your mixture is going to be somewhere in between 5 and 10. You're looking for 8, okay? You want to make 250 milliliters of 8. So let's define our variables here. So let's say F is the amount of the 5%, and let's say T is the amount of the 10% mix bottle. Okay, so first one, I need 250 milliliters, right? So some amount of 5% plus some amount of 10% is going to give me 250 milliliters. Okay, that's my first equation. The second equation comes from the actual concentrations themselves. So 5% of my F amount plus 10% of my 10 amount, my T amount, equals 8%, so 8 times my 250 milliliters amount. So this is probably the most confusing part. Like, how do I come up with this equation? 5% of the amount in the bottle, so F is that amount. So 5% of that amount. It could be 100 milliliters, it could be 150 milliliters, or whatever the amount of milliliters. Combined with 10% of the amount in the T bottle here, so it's the amount for T, has to be totally combined to 250, but that 250 will have to be 8%, right? So you can't have a 9% of 250, or 7% of 250, it has to be exactly 8. So that's what we're trying to get at here. Okay, so here's an equation we have to solve for. I could try and use elimination here, but before I do that, I have to do some multiplication. I'm trying to get a different color here. It might not be possible. Okay. What happens if I multiply this whole equation by 5? Well, I would get 5f plus 5t equals 250 times 5, which is 1250, right? 1250. Okay. And so what you can see here, okay, let me write these equations again. So I have 5, oh, now I'm getting different colors. A little bit lagged. Okay, I see. So 5f, maybe I can use different colors here. 5f plus 5t equals 1250. So that's equation 1. Let's write equation 2 again. 5f plus 10t equals 8 times 250 is 2000. Okay, now I can use elimination. I'm going to eliminate my f's here because they have the same coefficient. So 5f minus 5f is 0. 5 minus 10 is negative 10. So I'm going to subtract. Remember, we're subtracting. 5 minus 10 is negative 5t. And 1250 minus 2000 is negative 750. So now I have an equation here. Here's my equation. I have to solve for that t, the unknown value of t. So if I divide both sides by negative 5, t will equal to negative 750 divided by negative 5, and that's equal to 150. So right away, the 10% amount, I need 150 milliliter amount of the 10% acetic acid. Okay. So if I need 150 milliliters of 10% acetic acid, how many milliliters will I need from the 5% acetic acid? Well, if I use one of my original equations here, this one, okay, F plus T equals 250. F is going to equal then 250 minus T. And so 250 minus, what did I get for T? I got 150 there, so minus 150 is equal to 100. So the amount of 5 milliliter acetic acid I need is 100 ml. So therefore, to get 250 milliliters of 8%, she needs 100 milliliters of 5% combined with 150 milliliters of 8% to get the correct concentration. Okay, so you probably have to look at this question a couple of times because understanding the chemistry behind it, this is really like a science calculation, science application, and just connecting the pieces between percentages and the amounts sometimes a little bit more difficult. So have a second look through this, and there's a couple of practice problems that'll help you get through this. And that ends my video.